Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great beginning to your weekend out there. I got you an update on many things in this morning's video. The first thing, of course, we will discuss is an update on the tropics. We do have Tropical Storm Beryl out there, which as of right now is around 7 a.m. Eastern Time. It is a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. This is expected to strengthen throughout the next really few days throughout the weekend. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you latest information from the National Hurricane Center. Okay, we're going to dive deep into what this looks like right now and how healthy it is. We're going to go over the latest model guidance. And then we're going to talk about the background of the system, why it's doing so well out there, why it will continue to do even better over the next few days, basically over the weekend, as eventually this will strengthen into a hurricane and eventually a higher end Category 2 hurricane is forecast per the National Hurricane Center. So we will talk about a couple other areas we are watching too throughout the video, especially the wave behind Tropical Storm Beryl, which has a 50-50 shot to develop into a tropical depression or a named storm now sometime in the next 7 days. So there's a lot to talk about. So we'll discuss all that information for you folks. After we get done giving you an update on the tropics, of course, we're not going to leave you guys hanging across the lower 48. We'll give you some information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Saturday, because there is a chance of strong to severe storms across the lower 48 that we need to speak on. Take advantage of those timestamps that I got for you folks. I plugged them all in for you folks just to jump ahead. I understand not everybody has 45 minutes to hear about the weather, so definitely take advantage of those. I take time out of the videos to put them there. But if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's take a look at the entire Atlantic Basin. Let's make sure this is working for us, and it is. If you're noticing what this weird line is going across the screen, that is the sun coming up across the Atlantic and now starting to come up across, North America pretty much. So let's circle a couple areas. This is our tropical storm right here. It has a nice cyclonic spin to it. It's doing pretty well. Has that shrimp type look. Has a nice outflow to it. It's a pretty healthy tropical storm right now. This will be our main focus. This will continue to move east to west and head towards Barbados and the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands. Okay, we still have this pesky spin out here, this tropical wave right into here. And this will have one more shot to develop in the Bay of Campeche, the southwest Gulf of Mexico over the weekend. Has a 40% chance as of right now to do that. That might drop in the next update or two. Either way, this will probably be one of the few times we'll talk about this in this video. Soon we won't be talking about it all, but it's worth mentioning because it might have one last trick up its sleeve to kind of develop into something. We certainly need to watch it because the water is very warm in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. And then our secondary focus, I would say, would be this tropical wave behind Tropical Storm Beryl. This has a 50-50 shot to become our next named storm, or just a depression at least. Model guidance really likes the idea of this just developing right behind Tropical Storm Beryl. So we will talk a little bit about this throughout the video as we are mainly focusing in on Tropical Storm Beryl. If you look really closely, you can actually see some dust out here. You can kind of see that kind of tan color, the brownish color, kind of right into here. That is dust coming off of Africa from the Saharan desert here. But we'll talk about how this really has not affected Tropical Storm Beryl, even when it was just an Invest 95L, and why it will continue to not really affect this storm. So this is what's going on across the entire Atlantic Basin. Let's get this all off your screen, continue to move forward. A full update on the tropics per your 5 a.m. update. We'll have another update in here in about 30 minutes or 45 minutes or so. So some of this info could change. But as of now, that area that I circled in the Western Caribbean does have that 40% chance to develop sometime in the next, pretty much the next 48 hours, has a 40% chance to develop. And then we have the area behind Beryl that has a 50% chance to develop in the next 7 days. This is our tropical wave, and this will most likely get dubbed an Invest probably in the next update or 2 or 3. So, and then we got Beryl right there. So if we take a look at Beryl, it is, and this is pretty much going to be your full-fledged update on Beryl. I just kind of wanted to give you, an update on those other two waves too. So now we're fully focusing in on Tropical Storm Beryl. 1,001 millibar low pressure system as of right now. Another update, like I said, will come out in about 30 to 45 minutes. This might drop even further, but as of now, it's a 1,001 millibar system. It's a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm moving west at 21 miles per hour. So that's the latest detailed information on this. But if we take a look at the latest comb, forecast to, maintain tropical storm status throughout the day. But as we get into tonight, after midnight tonight, they're saying once they drop that 2 a.m. update, they're expecting this to become a hurricane, hit that hurricane status, which would make it 75 miles per hour or higher pretty much, and pretty much maintains hurricane status throughout the life. I mean, here's the timeline: 2 p.m. hurricane, 2 a.m. Monday. This will be a hurricane just outside of Barbados. By the way, Barbados does have hurricane watches up now, and I expect many advisories and watches and even warnings to get issued across the Windward Islands too here in the coming updates. But forecast to maintain hurricane status strength, guys, all the way to Jamaica. Okay, so this is the latest track. One thing I love looking at, it's called Zoom Earth, guys. It's available to y'all. It's like a combination of Google Maps and the tropics, and you can actually see the intensity. So forecast to become a 75 mile per hour hurricane at 2 a.m. tonight. Forecast to become an 85 mile per hour hurricane by tomorrow afternoon. Here's Barbados right here. Then it's forecast to now become a Category 2 hurricane before it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. So Barbados, I know I've seen some comments from people tuning in from this area. You're right here, of course, hurricane watch up now. Category 2 hurricane forecast, this actual center of the storm forecast to go just south of you guys. 100 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane. And then it'll cruise on through the Windward Islands. Forecast to now become, it's bumped up 5 miles per hour. Remember, if you tuned into last night's video, forecast peak intensity was 105. Peak intensity now is 110 miles per hour. If it goes up another 5 miles per hour, its peak intensity will be considered major hurricane status, which is a Category 3 or higher. So this is about as high as it can go as far as Category 2 per National Hurricane Center update. So 110 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane forecast as it basically cruises over the Windward Islands. It maintains that into the Eastern Caribbean, begins to weaken. I definitely think it'll weaken as it starts to cruise, deeper into the Caribbean. 105 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane still there south of Hispaniola, and is forecast to be a hurricane as it moves over Jamaica sometime Wednesday. So we're definitely watching you folks in Jamaica. So I love this site. It's easy to use. You take a zoomed out look. There it is. There's Tropical Storm Beryl. And so a pretty cool site to look at. Now let's take a look at the system. We're not going to get really zoomed in on it. This is a little bit more of a broad look, but of course not as broad as the beginning of the video. But of course, there's the Lesser Antilles. There's Puerto Rico, Windward Islands here. You're already getting some unsettled weather right now, but I don't want you to think this is because, or this is from Tropical Storm Beryl. It is not. This is its own separate convection right here. But this is Tropical Storm Beryl. It's doing very well. A nice outflow to it. Let's get the black here. You see how kind of these upper cirrus clouds right here are kind of going like this, right? Ooh, that's an ugly arrow. Let's make sure, let's do it better than that. You see how it's going like that? And then you kind of have an outflow that's kind of going like this. And it's kind of doing it down here, outflowing like that. So the upper wind pattern above this system is very healthy. Okay, there's a nice outflow, and this is centered kind of just south or southwest of an upper ridge that's kind of up here, right? So the winds in the upper level of the atmosphere are basically working with this system to create a pretty low shear environment. So this is basically it's a pretty compact tropical storm for now. It could get larger, but pretty compact for now. This is able to allow this to continuously pop off continuous convection, shower, and storm activity right here in the center of this storm. So that's what it's doing. And what I mean by that shrimp look here is, it quite literally looks like a shrimp, guys. If you look at that, it's kind of like that. Yeah, I'm just kind of drawing just for fun now, right? But it literally looks like a shrimp out there, just a curled up shrimp. And when us in the weather community, when we really start to see that, we know that this thing is really starting to take on more of a cyclonic structure and really at least maintaining strength, but it's also probably strengthening too. Now, with such a abrupt upper wind pattern that's kind of coming in from like this is getting hit by a little bit of shear on kind of, I would say, the east-northeast portion of this storm. So a lot of that mid-level convection that's indicated in these, greens, oranges, reds, and even blacks you're seeing is kind of, I would say, shunted off from the main low-level circulation. It's probably displaced a little bit. Not exactly vertically stacked, but guys, we don't expect this from a tropical storm. But basically where you see the kind of these blacks and whites, that indicates higher cloud tops, which indicates stronger shower and storm activity, stronger convection, which means that this is doing pretty well. So we got to watch this, but a nice outflow. You can see kind of these clouds kind of dispersing out this way, going the opposite direction as the system. This means that this thing is ventilating very well. So that's what's going on with the system right now. I can't draw a really good arrow to save my life this morning. I don't know why, but we'll continue to try to do that. But let's continue to move forward here as we look at the model guidance. So this is the latest GFS that we have. And guys, I'm not even going to show the European. I think the European is off. It's keeping this system very, very weak. And we're really just going to focus in on the GFS in this video. And then we'll take a look at a hurricane model, the HF model too. So we'll start off this morning. It's initializing as a 1,000 millibar storm. It's pretty much got it right on. Couple millibars off, but I mean, we don't expect these models to be perfect. As we continue to move into Sunday morning, the GFS is thinking this is going to be a 993 millibar tropical storm, and very well could be a hurricane. And then as we move into Monday morning, it's saying that this is going to be a 970 millibar high-end Category 1, low-end Category 2 hurricane. Okay, National Hurricane Center has it as a Category 2 hurricane Monday morning. And here it comes, Barbados, north of that center, heading right into the Windward Islands. And check out the wave right behind it. Remember, I told you we'd mentioned this a little bit throughout the video. There's a wave right behind it that's a 1,005 millibar, getting close to tropical storm status storm. Okay, we'll continue to move this forward. We get into Tuesday. Let's take it all the way to Tuesday morning. We got a 969 millibar low pressure hurricane south of Puerto Rico, entrenched well into the Eastern Caribbean. This would be a Category 2 hurricane cruising through what we call the graveyard of the Caribbean, which is typically just an unfavorable area for systems, tropical systems to maintain themselves, and certainly unfavorable for gradual strengthening. Typically, they begin to weaken. And this will begin to weaken as it continues to cruise sort of east to west. But we just got to watch to see how fast it does. But anyways, check out the system right behind it. There's what would be Tropical Storm Chris right now, 50-50 shot to develop. Could get bumped up to from a 50 to a 60% chance in the next update. But check out the system right behind it. This moves it right over the same area as Tropical Storm or Hurricane Beryl will move over. Midway next week, we have a 990 millibar low pressure tropical storm, low end hurricane, moving a little bit like a tick further north than what Beryl will do here in the coming days. But man, we got to watch this one too. And this strengthens into a hurricane in the same area that Beryl does. It'll be Hurricane Chris. Pretty wild stuff. Now let's get back into the Caribbean. 970 millibar low, Monday evening, July 1st. Okay, Category 2 hurricane. We take into Tuesday morning, 969 millibar low pressure hurricane. And I think it begins to sniff out a weakness in the ridging up here. And we'll talk more on that here in a second. But still a 973 millibar low pressure hurricane, Category 2 hurricane, as we're getting into Tuesday evening, July the 2nd. Okay, this is just south of the island of Hispaniola. I think as it gets close, if it gets this close, I think the circulation, the cyclonic spin of the system will get disrupted a little bit from the higher elevations of Hispaniola. And if it moves right over Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, it will get absolutely shredded because of those higher elevations. Tropical systems do not like higher elevations, and they just don't like land, but they especially do not like mountaintops, mountain ranges, and all those things. But we continue to get into Wednesday morning. This is gradually weakening at this point because of the interaction of land, but also I think with the introduction of shear, the upper wind pattern does not support it being as favorable of an atmosphere as it pretty much did earlier in the life of this system, which will be more so in the Eastern Caribbean and sort of east of the Windward Islands. Okay, so this will begin to weaken, no doubt. In fact, it's noted on the National Hurricane Center cone, but there's a chance that, it might not. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But the GFS, as we're getting into Wednesday, has this as a sub 990 millibar tropical storm, hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, and it has its kind of sliding kind of between Cuba and Jamaica. This would definitely bring impacts to Jamaica. And then what will it do after that? Well, it kind of has it maintaining as kind of a weaker tropical storm and then sneak into the Gulf of Mexico. All right, and what happens after that? We don't know, guys, but we're not going to focus too much that far out. And then check out what would be Hurricane Chris behind it. It basically goes exactly where Beryl goes. Sneaks up right just south of Hispaniola. So we got to watch that one too. So it's going to be hard to focus on both of these, but we really just need to focus on Beryl for now. But it's going to be pretty wild if that actually ends up happening, where we have another system that directly a day or two later trails Beryl. So that's an update from the GFS. Now, if we look at the HAF model, let's see if we have an updated model from this. And we do. So that's cool. We can look at this. Latest HAF, it's called the HAF-A model. All this is available in Tropical Tidbits, by the way, that you guys could look at. But we'll start to stop by this evening and saying it's still going to be a 1,002 millibar low pressure storm. Honestly, I think that's initializing a little bit too weak. But as you can tell, you see the L right here, you see that number. As that continues to drop, you'll notice this radar will brighten up a lot more, and that means you got a sign of a strengthening storm system. So get into Sunday morning. The HAF model says this isn't going to strengthen that much. But as we are starting to get into Sunday evening, 995 millibar system, and then Barbados right here, it's saying this is going to be a 984 millibar, probably be a Category 1, low-end Category 2 hurricane as it cruises south of Barbados. And then it starts to move into areas of the Windward Islands. Who is it going to hit the hardest? Which island? It just depends on who gets hit by the eye wall. Okay, St. Lucia in here, Martinique, we got to figure out who it's going to hit the hardest. And we'll know more of that information as we get over the next 24 hours, 24 to 36 hours. But this continues, guys, and it sneaks into the Eastern Caribbean. But, the timeline off this model is showing for Monday morning for the Windward Islands. Barbados, more so, I would say, late Sunday night into Monday morning, more so Monday morning into maybe Monday afternoon, Monday evening for the Windward Islands. And this gets into the Caribbean at this point. It strengthens it into a sub 980 millibar hurricane and then kind of maintains itself for a period. Okay, like that's Puerto Rico up here. And this is right here in the middle of the Eastern Caribbean as a 978 Category 2 hurricane. This looks like a pretty big hurricane too. Does it broaden as it gets into the Eastern Caribbean? Not sure. But HAF model, which I think the HAF-A model is probably one of the more reliable hurricane models. Sometimes these models can really overdo things, but they actually did well over the last couple hurricane seasons. And I certainly think it's worth looking at. So that's that. We continue to move forward now. We look at the HAF model also, and we look at the upper wind pattern. So this is one we're kind of geek out on you folks a little bit. And we'll kind of just look at this afternoon for the system. It's saying it's going to be a 998 millibar low pressure tropical storm. So what's going on here? Okay. Upper ridge of high pressure is right here. I'm just going to do a little arrow. Okay. If you notice these lines with little arrows kind of embedded into these lines, these are the stream lines here. So these are winds at 200 millibars, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air, right? So if you notice, these arrows are kind of pointing away from this system and kind of going like this, then kind of going like that, and kind of wrapping around this ridge of high pressure. Okay, you see that the arrows are pointing away from the low pressure. They're pointing like this way. They're pointing like that way. But if you look right into here, it looks like the arrows are pointing towards the system. That is because the flow around this upper ridge is going just like that, an anticyclonic flow, right? So the flow on the southern base right into here, okay, of this ridge of high pressure is supporting an east to west flow, which is aiding this system because the system itself is moving east to west. Now, once you get to the west side of the system, air is getting pushed out away from the storm in the upper levels of the atmosphere and kind of on the southwestern flank of the system too. Air is getting pushed against it, and you would think, okay, well, that probably doesn't work well with the system. Well, it does create a little bit of shear kind of on the eastern, northeastern side of the system. It does. But not that much because it's kind of working with the system as the flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere is kind of going the same direction as the system is. But in general, if you look at these arrows I kind of drew over here, that air being pushed out away from the system is allowing for a nice ULAC, an anticyclonic flow, stands for upper level anticyclone. So air is actually getting pushed out away from the system in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So air is always rising in the system, right? And then it's getting dispersed in the upper levels of the atmosphere, allowing for more air to rise. Then that gets dispersed. This allows for the continuation of shower and storm activity, which of course aids in the at least maintaining of strength of this system, and most likely the strengthening of this system, which also creates kind of a moist environment for this system to kind of maintain itself. So if it has a very kind of entrenched moist environment because the upper wind pattern supporting the continuation of convection, then it's protected from that dry air that's pretty close by, but it cannot get into the circulation. So this continues to be there with this system. In fact, I would argue that the pattern becomes its most supportive right as it approaches like Barbados and the Lesser Antilles. Okay, you have a nice anticyclonic flow with this system. Arrows pointing away from the system, pointing this way. And yeah, I mean, any tropical system is going to battle at least a little bit of shear, a little bit of dry air. No tropical system has a perfect environment. We don't know what that is. But this is going to have a pretty good environment for at least a moderate pace of strengthening out there, especially as we get throughout the deeper into the weekend, into early next week. Okay, so because it has such a favorable upper wind pattern, this indicates moisture in the atmosphere in the mid-levels. Of course, that's your dry air indicating with a brown shaded color, and then your moist air indicated in the green shaded color. So if you notice, there's your system right here. It's completely shrouded in very moist air. There's dry air on top of the system and also trying to wrap in. It's trying for dear life. But that favorable upper wind pattern is basically just not allowing for that dry air to come in. Now, that's not the main factor, but it's the main factor in this having that continuation of just moisture and convection to continue to fire. That's why this system has continued to fire convection. It has not been void of convection for the life of this system since it was a baby tropical wave. It has continued to fire shower and storm activity. And as you can tell, as this gets close to Barbados, the Windward Islands, this is just a nice plume of moisture. Yes, there's dry air out in front, dry air trying to sneak into the system, but it has created such a nice kind of entrenched, moist body of air that it's not really being impacted by this dry air. Now, that'll change. That'll certainly change. We kind of go back to the upper wind pattern. This will change as it starts to get into the Caribbean. Still somewhat favorable environment, but what happens here is, okay, you have, let's move it right into here. Okay, this is for Tuesday afternoon, July the 2nd. We have a TUT interaction that's kind of hard to draw it on here, but it's kind of diving down into here. Okay, so, the environment right here is still not that bad, but what's out ahead of this is some shear out ahead of this storm. So you have winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere that's about to shift out of this direction. This is going to create some shear for the system because of this TUT, basically a persistent upper level low that can whiplash these systems and cause higher amounts of shear. So we kind of get this back in motion here, and you can really see it right here. Okay. Two things go on that I really think is going to be kind of the demise of this system. High levels of shear and then interaction with land. Of course, you see the land masses here. And if you look at these arrows right in here, you see how they're kind of pointing this way. Okay, this kind of TUT is going like this. But you see how the streamlines are pointing this way? Well, this system's obviously moving this way, right? Or more so this way. So this is not working in tandem with just the flow with this system at all. Okay, so this is going to create probably shear, probably some, southwesterly shear to this system and really begin upper wind pattern wise to disrupt the flow of this system. That aided by the fact that it's going to interact with a lot of landmass between Jamaica, Hispaniola, and then maybe eastern sections of Cuba. So really the flow isn't very supportive in the upper levels of the atmosphere once it gets in here. It encounters a lot of shear. So that's what's going on as far as the background. Hopefully I explained that in a way where you guys can understand. That's always important to me. But as far as impacts, guys, this is the latest info that we have. Of course, in that dark, almost burgundy type color, that's where you have an 80 to 90% chance to see tropical storm force winds, basically 40 mile per hour winds or higher between now and 2 a.m. Saturday. So this is now getting extended into the southern coastline of Hispaniola, starting to get into Jamaica, where you're starting to get that over 50% chance of these tropical storm force winds. Well, once this upgrades to a hurricane, we'll probably get an outlook that shows hurricane force winds, but impacts are certainly on the way for the Windward Islands. No doubt about it. Gets a little bit more fuzzy once we get to the Greater Antilles and the Caribbean Islands, but still impacts pretty much look likely at this point. And then we'll take a look at rainfall. This has not changed from last night. But, Barbados, 100 to 150 millimeters of rain, 4 to 6 inches of rain. Windward Islands, kind of the same thing. We'll see how much this tweaks over the next couple of days. And we kind of go back and look at this. We'll see if we have a new update from the National Hurricane Center. We do not. So we will have another update like literally any minute, guys. So this Beryl might get upgraded. Very well might get upgraded to a 55 mile per hour tropical storm, or 60 mile per hour tropical storm, but the information that I explained to you does not change. So if we take a look at the steering currents with this, the last thing we'll look at with the tropics, here comes Beryl on your screen Sunday afternoon. If you notice these dark colors, like these dark red colors, this burgundy color, and then kind of just more of a red color here, this is where you have ridging on top of this storm. And this system basically is battling on the southern end of this ridging. And as it continues, a couple things will happen. I will mention this, especially when we're talking steering currents. A stronger system will always try to fight for latitude more, meaning it'll always try to turn north. Okay, so the stronger this system is, sort of in the Eastern Caribbean, I think the more it'll take the more northerly path of the National Hurricane Center cone of uncertainty. The weaker it is, I think the more it'll go east to west throughout the Caribbean. And then there's another thing we got to watch. There's a weakness in the ridge. If you notice kind of this more orange color showing up here, okay, more stronger ridging over here. Of course, more stronger ridging over the deep south and the southern plains. There's a little bit of a weakness into here. I think this system feels that weakness, okay? And that's why it tries to go, I would say, more so west-northwest instead of more so just due west. It kind of feels that weakness, especially it being a stronger system, and it tries to get pulled north because of this weakness in the ridge. You kind of see the more orange colors here. There's just a weakness right into there being carved out by that upper trough. Okay, so it's going to try to fill that weakness, but in general, this is being aided to go mostly east to west because of the persistent ridging over the North Atlantic and over North America. And we continue to move forward with this. And you can see how this kind of tries to start to go a little bit further north. But if there wasn't landmass here, guys, I would be pretty worried about the U.S. I'm still not saying this isn't out the possibility to affect the U.S., but it's way too far out. A lot of people say, hey, is this going to affect South Carolina, Georgia, Florida? I don't know. We got to worry about our friends here in the Caribbean first. But we do know that this is likely going to get pulled over landmass because of the steering currents. Now, what's going to happen with what would possibly be Chris back here? This is around the 4th of July here. There is a weakness up here. So I would imagine Chris would try to get pulled a little bit further north faster than ultimately how Beryl gets pulled north. Okay, so that's an update on the tropics. Let's talk about what's going on across the lower 48. A lot of rain across Quebec, Ontario, a lot of rain across the Northeast. Really wish y'all give us some rain down here in South Carolina. I'm at day 19 without the rain, guys. It's dancing around my house. It's incredible. We got shower and storm activity across the Midwest, across the Ohio Valley, all the way back here to the Central Plains. So we're going to watch to see how the atmosphere recovers, and we'll have a risk of strong to severe storms throughout the afternoon and evening hours. We do have some pop-up activity across the deep south and some moisture dancing around off the coast of the southeast and a little bit of moisture across the desert southwest. But we look at watches, warnings, and advisories. A very hot, miserably hot day across the deep south, the southern plains. Excessive heat warnings littered across the Mississippi Delta region, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, northern Louisiana, Memphis including this, Little Rock, Shreveport, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Tulsa. Miserably hot day expected. Very hot day expected across California too. Excessive heat warnings up. Excessive heat watches might get upgraded to advisories or warnings. Heat advisories up for southern tip of Florida, areas of North Carolina, areas of New Jersey, and Delaware. Flood watches are in effect right now for all the heavy rain moving over PA and areas of Ohio. So this is watches, warnings, and advisories. We look at the excessive rainfall outlook. We do have a slight risk over areas of Pennsylvania, the southern tier of New York, and then the Adirondacks and the Telkil of New York. And we have a slight risk right here too over sections of Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado. That means there's at least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in a given location. Then we have a risk of strong to severe storms today. Marginal risk extending from New Mexico, Colorado, all the way across areas of the southern plains, areas of the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, and then we have a more increased risk of severe weather across the Ohio Valley into areas of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. There is a level 2 out of 5 risk, which includes Cleveland, Columbus, might as well say Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Rochester. What is this for? there is a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location for the city of Pittsburgh. In that brown area, 5% risk of a tornado. The green area, a 2% risk of a tornado. The wind threat, you got a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail threat, pretty low. The environment really does not support hail much with this setup. So let's take a deeper look at the southeast. Really the only thing to really mention here is just scattered, isolated to scattered shower and storms activity expected across Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. A little bit less, I would say, scattered across the Carolinas. But, you know, if you get rain, certainly always count your blessings, because we're embedded into a ridge out here, an upper ridge. So the flow is very stagnant. So you really need these storms to pop up right on top of you for you to get rain. Trust me, I've been a living and breathing example of that over the last 2 days, where, you know, you would think that a storm's going to move over your house that's 2 miles away from you, but it never does. It just kind of sits over one area and then weakens in that same area. But certainly scattered activity. I don't expect these to be I don't expect a whole lot of widespread severe weather, but just like with any storm in the summer, it could be strong to severe. We see it just about every day, even on a general risk day. So there's a chance of just storms across the southeast. I think the risk for these storms to be stronger to severe are certainly going to be higher up here in the Boot Heel, Missouri, Kentucky. But we'll continue to move this forward. We got to watch some storms that kind of surge down to eastern Tennessee later tonight after midnight. Shower and storm activity up there in West Virginia. Shower and storm activity showing up tomorrow morning in eastern Kentucky also. And I think we're just going to continue to get a lot of tropical moisture in the state of Florida. So we go up here into the northeast today. A lot of shower activity. Embedded heavy rain will surge across New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. Shower activity up here in Maine. More strong to severe storm chances down here in Pennsylvania, PA, areas of New York State, Ohio, West Virginia. And for my friends up here in Quebec and Ontario, there's going to be some storms surging through your area up here too. So be aware of this. Higher end tornado threat is possible. I wouldn't be surprised to hear about some tornadoes up here in southern Ontario, really Quebec, just up here in this region. Definitely be aware of these storms up here. I know I have a few people who tune in from that area. I really appreciate that. Some storms, a lot of storm activity in Ohio, PA. All this will cruise. This could develop into a nasty line of storms in eastern PA as we get into this evening. So if you live Scranton, get into Philadelphia, DC, watch for these storms, but they could fall apart as they make it into like New York City, southern New England, and then we wake up tomorrow morning to more storms potentially forming in PA. So a closer look at these states. Ohio, okay, don't want to leave you guys hanging. This is around 2 to 3 p.m. Look at these storms forming in the middle of the state. Look at these storms right outside of Cleveland right here, 3 to 4 p.m. These storms will fire, especially for the northern sections of West Virginia. Look at all these storms in western PA right on top of Pittsburgh. This is about 5 to 6 p.m. These continue. We're going to have another area of storms that forms like back here in central Indiana, areas of northwestern Ohio. And then we'll start to get into after midnight. Could still have some lingering shower and storm activity. West Virginia seeing a very rainy wee hours of the morning period tomorrow morning. And then we'll get into tomorrow morning in general, where we'll continue to deal with the shower and storm activity. If you look at the updraft Felicity swath, the highest tornado risk looks to be confined to eastern Ohio and then areas of PA. But you do see some highlighted colors. This is indicating rotation with some of these storms. Just know that these storms, especially once you get tucked in a little bit closer to eastern Ohio, Pennsylvania, will have a shot to produce a tornado, guys, today. So damaging winds is possible too. And of course, if you look at the predicted wind gust swath from these storms, and certainly with some of these storms, they could pack 30, 40 mile per hour winds possible with this. It really likes the idea of northern Ohio, PA getting these storms the most. But definitely some pockets of 40 to 50 mile per hour winds are certainly possible with these storms. So definitely be aware of that. So we look at a wider look at PA and surrounding states. A lot of shower and storm activity this morning, more so just heavy rain. But as we get into this afternoon, you got to watch these storms right here. You see how there's not a lot going on the southern flank of these storms. All the energy and just the players on the field will feed into the southern flank of these storms. And I could see this being, the biggest threat for a tornado right here in this region. This is where you had that 5% risk of a tornado right into here. So if you live in northwestern PA, kind of south of Erie, please be aware of this. I think once you get deeper into New York State, I think you kind of have to deal with the atmosphere kind of recovering from the morning rain. But you could definitely get some storms across the Finger Lakes region into the Binghamton region. But these storms will continue, and they could develop into a line in central PA, cruise across areas of eastern PA, extend all the way down to my friends here in Maryland, eastern sections of West Virginia, maybe as far south as northern VA. And then we have to see how these storms kind of maintain themselves into the overnight hours. But you look at the updraft velocity swath, it really likes that storm I just talked about here in the northern counties of PA, really northwestern PA. So be aware of some tornadoes with these storms. It's definitely going to be possible. Okay, so south central U.S. today. Besides those storms, the immediate southern plains, not a whole lot of activity. You're going to get some pop-up tropical downpours down here in the southern half of Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, some storm activity which will likely hit strong to severe limits for some, and southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. Going to get some storms in northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas is likely. Look at this shower and storm activity in New Mexico, Colorado that will be ongoing. These storms could really pack a punch as they kind of cruise along this upper ridge into the panhandle of Oklahoma. Look at this intense area of storms getting into the panhandle of Oklahoma. You want to watch that. You want to watch these clusters of storms in southeastern Kansas. And all this continues, and we'll just have to watch the energy as it moves out of New Mexico into Kansas into the morning hours. We could have a complex of showers and storms as we're waking up tomorrow morning across Kansas. But, you know, if you live in southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and this area right in here, where Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois meet, some storms are definitely possible. Guys, I do apologize that I'm not as detailed as I normally am with the daily outlooks. But when you got so much to talk about with one other thing with the tropics, and then you have to go right back into discussing today's forecast, it is a lot to talk about. And it took me an hour to get going with this video this morning. I don't know why, but my voice is hoarse, and I struggled so bad getting this video going this morning. One of the worst struggles I've had, but we're making it through. Heat indices for the hottest time of the day today, over 110 degrees. It could hit 115 degrees as a heat index somewhere in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, or Texas today. It is going to be hot. These are not actual air temperatures. This is the heat indices. So please, please take the precautions. Don't stay outside too long and be safe out there. Conditions up here for the north central U.S. I will watch some storms in the eastern UP of Michigan and lower Michigan. If you live in the eastern UP, these storms look pretty intense. Kind of north of Lake Huron, north of Lake Michigan, between all this and Lake Superior. These storms, please be aware of these. Don't let them catch you off guard. If you live in the eastern UP of Michigan, could get some storms this afternoon. Could get some storms anywhere in the lower Michigan area, just not showing up much on this run of the HRRR model. Everybody else, though, it's pretty quiet out there. It really is. So, the western U.S., besides some moisture in the Four Corners region that we kind of already mentioned for Colorado and New Mexico, we'll get a little bit of shower and storm activity possible for eastern Arizona, eastern Utah. Shower activity possible in the Pacific Northwest once again. But everybody else is quiet. It's a pretty chill day out west. So not a whole lot to talk about. One thing that I did not have pulled up, I'm going to have to do it on the fly here, is the temperatures as a whole. Kind of left that hanging. But these are temperatures today across the eastern U.S. Pretty hot in the mid-Atlantic. Pretty hot all the way up into the Midwest. But once you get into the Northeast, 60s and 70s, pretty warm day across the Great Lakes region, but honestly, very comfortable conditions. You know, across the immediate western U.S., nice conditions in the northern plains, only 60s and 70s for highs. Actually, a little cool, little pocket of cooler air. In northeastern Minnesota, highs only in the 50s. The southern tier of the country, though, brutally hot in Oklahoma and Texas. And just average type conditions out west. Whew, that was a tough one to get through, guys. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll turn around and do it again this evening. Have a great Saturday.